Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. In a shabby, genteel home in New England during the American Civil War live the four March sisters. It is a cold December, and Christmas is approaching. But with their father away serving as a chaplain in the Union Army, and with little money for presents, spirits are low. 16-year-old Margaret, or Meg, the eldest, is pretty and traditional, longing for a life of ease and luxury. 15-year-old Josephine, a tall, awkward, and fiery tomboy known as Jo, is the writer of the family, with a wild imagination and a loathing for all things prim and proper. 13-year-old Elizabeth, or Beth, is a painfully shy and gentle soul who lives for her music and her family. The youngest, 12-year-old Amy, is a budding artist with a pronounced sense of her own importance, a love of elegant things, and a slightly flattened nose she despairs of. Their mother, Marmee, a wise and loving woman, encourages them to overcome their personal faults, which they call their burdens, by playing their old childhood game of Pilgrim's Progress in earnest. Inspired by her and a moving letter from their father, the girls resolve to be better. Their first test comes on Christmas morning when they give their much-anticipated breakfast to the Hummels, a desperately poor immigrant family. Their sacrifice is rewarded that evening by a surprise feast of ice cream, cakes, and flowers sent by their wealthy old neighbor, Mr. Laurence, who had heard of their good deed. This act of kindness is the first bridge between the two households. At a New Year's Eve party, Jo, uncomfortable and trying to hide a scorched patch on her dress, retreats into a curtained alcove and unexpectedly finds herself face to face with the Laurence boy. Theodore Laurence, or Laurie, is a handsome, lonely boy of 15 living with his grandfather. He and Jo strike up an immediate and easy friendship, and soon he becomes like a brother to the March sisters, welcomed into their lively and loving home, which is a stark contrast to his own grand but silent mansion. Jo's friendship with Laurie gives her entry into his home, which she dubs the Palace Beautiful. She spends hours in his grandfather's magnificent library, and in time, even the gruff old Mr. Laurence grows fond of the boisterous, honest girl. Shy Beth, who yearns for a proper piano, is terrified of the old man. Seeing her love for music, he devises a way for her to come and practice on his late granddaughter's grand piano without having to speak to anyone. Overcome with gratitude, Beth painstakingly makes him a pair of slippers. In return, he surprises her with a gift of a small cabinet piano of her own, an act of kindness that breaks through her shyness and forges a tender, lifelong friendship between them. The girls' lives are filled with simple pleasures and trials. Meg suffers her valley of humiliation when she is caught with forbidden pickled limes at school and is punished by being struck on the hand, a disgrace that causes her to leave the school for good. Jo's greatest trial is her temper. After a quarrel, Amy, in a fit of spite, burns the manuscript of fairy tales Jo has been laboring over for years. Jo is devastated and vows never to forgive her. Her anger nearly leads to tragedy when, during a skating outing with Laurie, she willfully ignores Amy, who is struggling behind them. Amy, not hearing a warning about the thin ice in the middle of the river, falls through into the freezing water. A terrified Jo and a quick-thinking Laurie rescue her. The near disaster shocks Jo into deep remorse, and in a tearful confession to her mother, she learns that even Marmee struggles with a similar temper, a revelation that comforts Jo and strengthens her resolve to master her own temper. Meg gets her own taste of the fashionable world when she spends a fortnight at the home of her wealthy friend, Sally Moffat. There she is petted and made much of, but also feels the sting of her poverty. For a large party, the Moffat girls persuade her to be dressed up like a doll in a borrowed blue silk dress with powdered neck and frizzled hair. At the party, she feels awkward and unlike herself, a feeling intensified when Laurie appears and bluntly tells her he doesn't like her fuss and feathers. Meg overhears gossip speculating about her mother's plans to have her marry the rich Laurence boy, and realizes the falseness of this Vanity Fair. She returns home wiser, content with her simple life, though the lure of luxury is a temptation she will continue to face. This idyllic period comes to an abrupt end one November afternoon with the arrival of a telegram. Their father is gravely ill in a Washington hospital. Marmee prepares to go to him at once. In her desire to help, Jo makes a great sacrifice, cutting and selling her one beauty, her long, thick chestnut hair, for $25. Laurie's tutor, a kind and steady young man named John Brooke, accompanies Mrs. March as an escort, a kindness for which Meg is profoundly grateful. With their mother gone, the girls promise to keep the house running cheerfully, but a new shadow falls upon them. Beth, intending to the poor Hummel family, contracts scarlet fever. As her illness worsens, Jo nurses her with fierce devotion, while a terrified Meg watches over her. And Amy is sent into a lonely exile at Aunt March's to keep her safe from infection. Beth grows so ill that the doctor advises they send for Marmee. Laurie, seeing their despair, secretly telegraphs for her a day before they decide to, and Mrs. March arrives just as the crisis turns, finding Beth in a peaceful, healing sleep.
Mr. Brooks' return from Washington brings another significant event. He has fallen in love with Meg, a secret Laurie has mischievously discovered and shared with Jo. One afternoon, he confesses his feelings to Meg. Flustered and egged on by a perverse desire to test her power, she tells him to go away. At that moment, crotchety Aunt March arrives and, guessing the situation, forbids Meg to marry this cook, threatening to disinherit her. Meg's spirit is roused and she fiercely defends John. Her passionate defense is overheard by its subject, and after Aunt March storms out, he reappears. Meg, her heart finally clear, accepts him, and the family's first romance begins. 3 years later, the little brown house John Brooke has prepared for his bride is ready. The June wedding is simple and heartfelt, attended only by family and their closest friends. Meg looks lovely in a dress she made herself, with lilies of the valley in her hair. After the ceremony, she gives the first kiss to her mother. It is a happy, unfashionable affair, which ends with Meg and John walking away to their new home, the Dovecote. Meg's early married life is a series of domestic trials, from disastrous attempts at making currant jelly to struggles with housekeeping accounts, which are made worse by a $50 silk dress she impulsively buys on credit. They weather their first quarrels and learn to live together, their happiness truly beginning with the birth of their twins, Margaret and John Laurence, affectionately nicknamed Daisy and Demi. During these years, the other sisters pursue their own ambitions. Amy, with her aunt's support, devotes herself to her art, trying everything from charcoal portraits to plaster casts of her own foot, which ends in a comical disaster. She's becoming a graceful and accomplished young woman, though she still yearns for a place in good society. Jo, meanwhile, plunges into her writing. She wins a $100 prize for a sensational story, which she uses to send a still delicate Beth and her mother to the seashore for a restorative holiday. Encouraged, she writes more thrillers for a weekly paper, hiding her work from her family as she knows they would not approve of the lurid tales of passion and crime she concocts. Her desire for change and a need to remove herself from Laurie's growing affections lead her to New York, where she takes a position as a governess for a family friend, Mrs. Kirk. There, she meets Friedrich Baer, a kind, poor, middle-aged German professor who tutors various students in the boarding house. He is stout, bearded, and absent-minded, but possesses a genuine warmth and goodness that Jo finds herself increasingly drawn to. He becomes her friend and mentor, gently guiding her to see the cheapness of her sensational stories, and encouraging her to write from the heart. Back home, Laurie graduates from college and, finding Jo's feelings for him unchanged, finally proposes. Jo, though she loves him dearly as a brother, knows she cannot love him as a wife. She gently but firmly refuses him, breaking his heart and her own. To escape his sorrow, Laurie and his grandfather go to Europe. The following year is a quiet and sad one. Beth's health, which had never fully recovered from the scarlet fever, begins to fail. They watch, helpless, as her strength fades. She is their little faithful, facing the end with serene patience and a simple faith that comforts them all. In the spring, Beth dies peacefully in her sleep. In Europe, Amy has been enjoying her artistic studies and the pleasures of society, unaware of how ill her sister is. The news of Beth's death finds her in Vevey, Switzerland, heartbroken and alone. As promised, Laurie comes to comfort her. In their shared grief, they find a new, deeper connection. The year abroad has changed them both. Laurie is more mature and steady, while Amy has shed her girlish vanity for a gentle, womanly grace. The old, comradely affection blossoms into love, and they become engaged. A surprise return home reveals Mr. and Mrs. Laurence to their astonished family. Jo, left at home with her parents, feels her loneliness deeply. With Meg married, Beth gone, and now Amy and Laurie paired off, the world seems to have moved on without her. In this quiet time of work and waiting, her friendship with Professor Baer has been a great comfort, carried on through long letters. One rainy autumn afternoon, as her 25th birthday approaches, she is surprised by a visit. The professor has come to see her. They talk, and as they walk together under a shared umbrella, he confesses his love and asks her to be his wife. Jo, her heart finally ready, joyfully accepts. A year later, Aunt March's death leaves Jo an unexpected inheritance, her large country estate, Plumfield. Rejecting the idea of selling it, Jo and her professor decide to fulfill a shared dream. They open a school for boys at Plumfield, a happy, home-like place where Fritz can teach and Jo can be a mother to a wilderness of boys. Years later, the entire March clan gathers at Plumfield for a fall apple-picking festival. It is a picture of a fruitful harvest. Meg and John are happy with their growing children. Laurie and Amy have found a deep, quiet love, though their joy is shadowed by the delicacy of their own little daughter, named Beth. And Jo, surrounded by her husband, her own 2 small sons, and her flock of pupils, has found her truest calling. Though their lives are not the grand castles in air they once dreamed, the sisters have discovered that their own homes, built on love and hard work, are the most beautiful castles of all. Surrounded by her children and grandchildren, Marmee looks upon them with a full heart and knows they have found the greatest happiness